Hello again, class. Dr. Masters here. This is the second video lecture on the road. The first one covered narrative perspective or narrative structure and design, the time and place sort of signature of any narrative, really, whether it's a film, a history book. And certainly in works of literature and fiction. And today I wanted to talk about narrative perspective and narrative voice in the road. And I will try and keep this as brief as I can, offering you some sort of key descriptions for how to think of those things as they will relate to any question I might ask on narrative perspective in the road. And in the final lecture, we'll talk about thematic elements that emerge in the road, especially elements as they relate to narrative structure and narrative perspective and narrative voice. Again, you can think about perspective as narrative's perspective as who is the narrator who has opened the door into this world and is kind of acts as our guide, and whether it's a fairly silent guide who just kind of turns a camera on to the action, sort of as we saw in the Raymond Carver story, or whether it's a highly integrated, interactive voice, whether it's a first-person perspective, as we saw in Parable of the Sower. And in the road, we have a very particular kind of narrator. It's a third-person narrator, and we would say it's limited omniscient in the way that it knows everything about certain things. It does know how the world ended, but that seems far less important to the world that the boy is inheriting. The father only imagines a future not with him in it, but how it will look to the boy. So the narrative perspective is very limited. That's that limited omniscience, limited to what the father is seeing, what he's feeling, and what he's actually seeing, what he's experiencing. And the voice operates, I think, on all three of those levels. We get a lot of emotional descriptions of the despair the man feels, the hope he feels, though, for his son. However, there's a big shift that takes place upon the father's death when we see that the son, who we know will be inheriting the world from his father if he survives, and we see that he does. And as soon as the narrative voice of the father ends with his death, suddenly it picks up again, but in the perspective and voice of the boy. And that to me seems to reflect that larger sort of story about hope and possibility in a dead and dying world. And it leads us to questions about, well, is this totally hopeless, or does the possibilities that the boy represents, is that a meaningful answer to any kind of future world that the boy is on the brink of inheriting? Now, when we talk about a narrative's voice, or what I like to call its poetics, the language, the style, the pacing, the choice of words and vocabulary and imagery, I think the road is really, that's what won it the Pulitzer Prize, is the mastery of language that Cormac McCarthy has. He's considered the greatest prose stylist of the 20th and 21st century, late 20th century especially, when he published the majority of his work. Unlike many of his earlier novels, which are much more ornate and gothic in the language, you would say it's fairly stripped down. It's fairly austere in The Road, and yet it's densely imagistic. With the father kind of thinks in a sort of sort of ancient language almost that with him will probably disappear. We get a sense during the scene where he shoots and kills the road agent, the road rat, that he has probably been a doctor or a scientist, and that he's got a great, love of knowledge, and he tries to hang on to that until he finally sees, like, what's the point? He has shared the stories that he needs to share with his son, and that storytelling is very simple: good guys, bad guys, and yet there's a precision in the language, in the way that there's also, I think, a precision or a way of thinking that marks the father's character. So when we're thinking about narrative voice, we're thinking about the style of the writing, and the narrator as a character who embodies that voice for the reader, for us, through which it's a lens through which to experience this imaginary world that is constructed and created in the novel. I'm tempted to talk about a bunch of themes that relate to that, but I'll save what I see as some of the major thematic arcs, and then some more specific. We can drill down on a few thematic elements in the novel that give its sort of kind of anchor it to a kind of allegory of the human condition in the face of an existential crisis. What is the purpose of human existence? How do we make meaning without any recourse to community, to a society, to a sense of world building? This is a world-ending text. So that's what we'll get into in the third video. Now, for our second video, part 2 of Where's Waldo, except it's Where's Dr. Masters, today I'm on campus again. I am sitting at a table in front of the University of West Georgia's Student Center. So today I'm at UWG's Student Center. The last one, I was in front of the TLC building. So now you've got 2 of your 3 hints or clues to the final question that'll be on the, it'll be a 5-point short quiz on what is going to amount to about 25 minutes or so of these little 7 to 8 minute lectures. So I'll sign off. It's spring break, which is exciting. Your second quiz on Station 11, as well as your 2 Mountain of Notes on The Road, are officially, the assignments are officially due this, one last week, one this week. Station 11, Part 2, is officially due this week, but I've moved the due date. If you need to take spring break to catch up on reading, catch up on your work for other classes, that's totally fine. I moved the due date back to I believe it's the Sunday that spring break ends and school begins again. All right, so this is me signing off. Take care, everyone.